The autumn rain poured mercilessly over Manhattan, turning the usual Friday evening bustle into a chaotic scene of umbrellas and hurried footsteps. Alexander Reed, CEO of Reed Enterprises, stood beneath the awning of his building, watching his Rolls-Royce pull away without him, a rare technical issue forcing him to consider alternatives. At 35, he had built his empire from scratch, turning a small tech startup into a billion-dollar corporation. Yet tonight, he felt strangely vulnerable in the face of something as simple as rain. "Taxi," he called out, competing with dozens of others seeking shelter from the downpour. As a sleek yellow cab finally pulled up, someone else rushed for the door at the same time. "I'm sorry, but I really need this one," a woman's voice said firmly, her hand already on the handle. Alex turned to face her, ready to assert his claim, but the words died in his throat. She stood there, completely drenched, her dark hair plastered to her face, yet somehow maintaining an air of dignity. What caught his attention wasn't her beauty, though she was undeniably stunning, but the determination in her eyes. She wore scrubs under her soaked jacket, and the ID badge hanging from her neck identified her as Dr. Emma Chen, resident at New York Presbyterian. "Please," she added, softer this time, "I have a surgery in 30 minutes." Something about her sincerity made Alex step back. "Take it," he said, surprising himself. "Saving lives trumps my board meeting." She flashed him a grateful smile before sliding into the cab, but just as she was about to close the door, she hesitated. "Get in," she offered. "We can share." The hospital's only 10 blocks from the financial district. Alex found himself accepting before his brain could process the impropriety of sharing a cab with a stranger. As they settled in, he noticed she was shivering slightly, her thin scrubs offering little protection against the cold rain. "You're freezing," he observed, shrugging off his expensive suit jacket and offering it to her. "I couldn't possibly," she began, but he draped it over her shoulders anyway. "Consider it payment for the cab share," he said with a smile that had charmed countless business partners but felt strangely genuine this time. As the taxi navigated through rain-slicked streets, Alex learned that Emma was a third-year surgical resident specializing in pediatric cardiology. She spoke about her work with passion, her eyes lighting up as she described a particularly challenging case she'd helped solve the previous week. "Most people's eyes glaze over when I talk about congenital heart defects," she said with a self-deprecating laugh. "Most people haven't built a company around innovative medical technology," Alex replied, watching her eyes widen with recognition. "You're Alexander Reed," she breathed. "Your company developed the minimal invasive cardiac assist device we used last month on a 6-year-old patient." "Guilty as charged," he smiled, "though I prefer Alex." The cab pulled up to the hospital entrance, and Emma hurriedly handed him back his jacket. "Thank you for the warmth and the company, Alex," she said, reaching for her wallet. "Please let me," he insisted, already handing his card to the driver. "But save a life tonight, Dr. Chen. That's payment enough." She paused at the door, rain still falling steadily around them. "You know, your device, it didn't just help that one child. It's changing lives every day." Before he could respond, she was gone, disappearing through the hospital's sliding doors. Alex sat back in the cab, his jacket still warm from her body, carrying a faint trace of vanilla and something else he couldn't quite identify. As the taxi pulled away, he realized he was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in what felt like years. His phone buzzed, probably the board members wondering about his whereabouts, but for once, Alex didn't immediately reach for it. Instead, he found himself thinking about determined brown eyes and the way she'd lit up talking about saving lives. He hadn't asked for her number, hadn't even thought about it in the moment, but something told him their paths would cross again. What he didn't know then was that this chance encounter in the rain would set in motion a series of events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about success, love, and what truly matters in life. The taxi continued its journey toward the financial district, but Alexander Reed's mind remained at the hospital entrance, with a rain-soaked doctor who had unknowingly begun to crack the carefully constructed walls around his heart. 2 weeks had passed since the rainy taxi encounter, yet Alex couldn't shake the memory of Dr. Emma Chen from his mind. He sat in his penthouse office on the 50th floor, absent-mindedly turning his tablet in his hands instead of reviewing the quarterly reports. "Mr. Reed?" His assistant Sarah's voice crackled through the intercom. "The hospital board is here for the meeting about the medical technology partnership." Alex straightened his tie, pushing thoughts of Emma aside. "Send them in." The glass doors opened, revealing a group of distinguished hospital administrators. But his breath caught when he saw her among them. Dr. Emma Chen, looking completely different in a professional blazer and slacks, yet carrying the same quiet confidence he remembered. Their eyes met briefly before she quickly looked away, maintaining a professional demeanor. The hospital's chief of surgery, Dr. Harrison, began the presentation about implementing Reed Enterprises' new surgical technology across their pediatric department. And Dr. Chen here has been instrumental in testing the prototype, Dr. Harrison said. She'll present the clinical trial results. Emma stepped forward, her presentation polished and precise. She spoke with the same passion Alex remembered from the taxi, but now it was tempered with data and statistics that impressed even his business-oriented mind. The mortality rate in high-risk pediatric cardiac surgeries has decreased by 38% since implementing the Reed Assist device, she concluded. These aren't just numbers, they're children who get to go home to their families. After the presentation, as the board members mingled over coffee, Alex found himself gravitating toward Emma. Impressive results, Dr. Chen, he said, keeping his tone professional despite his racing heart. Mr. Reed, she acknowledged with a small smile. I didn't expect to see you here. It's still Alex, he corrected. And I always attend meetings about our medical division personally. It's not every day someone tells me my technology actually works. She laughed softly, the sound sending an unexpected warmth through his chest. Well, when you're not sharing taxis with strangers, you're apparently saving children's lives through innovation. Speaking of that night, Alex said, lowering his voice, I never got to properly thank you for sharing your cab. And I never got to thank you for the ride, she replied, or the jacket, which, by the way, I had dry cleaned and sent to your office. I noticed. Very professional of you. A young nurse interrupted them, needing Emma's attention for an urgent case. She excused herself, but not before Alex gathered his courage. Dr. Chen, he called after her, would you be interested in discussing the trial results further? Over dinner, perhaps? Emma paused, studying him with those intelligent brown eyes. Mr. Reed, Alex, I'm flattered, but I make it a policy not to mix business with pleasure, especially not with someone whose technology I'm evaluating. Strictly professional, he assured her, though his racing pulse suggested otherwise. To discuss the future of pediatric cardiac care, she seemed to consider this for a moment. Friday at 8, she finally suggested. There's a quiet Italian place near the hospital. Less fancy than you're probably used to, but they make excellent pasta. I'll have my assistant send a car. I can make it there on my own, she interrupted with a knowing smile. Wouldn't want to risk sharing another taxi with you. After she left, Alex returned to his office, trying to focus on work but finding his thoughts drifting to Friday evening. Sarah entered with a stack of contracts requiring his signature. The hospital board seemed pleased, she commented, especially that young doctor. Dr. Chen, was it? Schedule a comprehensive review of our pediatric medical division for next week, Alex said, instead of responding. I want to know everything about our current projects and potential areas for expansion. Sarah raised an eyebrow, but said nothing about his sudden interest in pediatric medicine. As she left, Alex walked to the window, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, Emma was probably in surgery, holding a child's life in her skilled hands. The thought both humbled and intrigued him. His phone buzzed with a message from his younger sister, Charlotte. Missed you at Mom's birthday dinner. Again. Being a billionaire isn't an excuse for forgetting family, Alex sighed, guilt mixing with his earlier optimism. When had he become this person? The one who missed family dinners for board meetings, who measured success in stock prices rather than moments shared. Something about Emma reminded him of who he used to be, before the money, before Reed Enterprises consumed his life. She saved lives while he, made money? Built empires of glass and steel? Friday suddenly felt very far away. Friday arrived with unexpected nervousness. Alex, who regularly negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, found himself changing his tie 3 times before settling on a simple, dark blue one. He deliberately left his Rolex at home, opting for a more modest timepiece. Bella Notte, the Italian restaurant Emma had suggested, was indeed far from his usual haunts. Nestled between a bookstore and a vintage record shop, it had a warm, inviting atmosphere that immediately put him at ease. Through the window, he spotted Emma already seated at a corner table, absorbed in what appeared to be medical charts. Working late? He asked as he approached. She looked up, quickly gathering the papers. Just reviewing some cases. Old habit, I can't seem to leave work at work. I know the feeling, he smiled, taking his seat. Though I suspect your work is more meaningful than mine, I wouldn't say that, Emma replied, studying him. Your work makes my work possible. Without medical innovation, I'd be far more limited in how I could help my patients. The waiter arrived with menus, and Alex noticed Emma didn't even open hers. You come here often, he asked. At least once a week. The owner's grandson was my patient last year. Successful arterial switch operation. She smiled warmly at the elderly man behind the counter, who waved in recognition. The carbonara here is life-changing. Then I'll trust your expertise, Alex said, closing his menu. As they waited for their food, the conversation flowed naturally. Emma told him about growing up in a small town in Connecticut, the daughter of Chinese immigrants who ran a local restaurant. They wanted me to be a doctor, of course. Typical Asian parents. She laughed. But they imagined me having a quiet private practice, not spending 36-hour shifts in emergency surgery. And yet you chose pediatric cardiology, Alex observed. Probably one of the most demanding specialties. Emma's expression softened. I lost my little brother to a heart condition when I was 12. The doctors tried everything, but the technology wasn't advanced enough then. That's why your work means so much to me, Alex. You're helping prevent other families from going through what mine did. The vulnerability in her voice touched something deep within him. I'm sorry about your brother, he said softly. What was his name? Michael. My parents gave us American names, thinking it would make life easier for us. She took a sip of wine. What about you? What drove you to focus on medical technology? Alex hesitated. Few people knew the real story behind Reed Enterprises' medical division. My mother, he finally said. She has a chronic heart condition. I started developing medical devices specifically trying to help her. The business aspect came later. And did it help her? Some, but she still has to be careful. Which makes me a terrible son for missing her birthday dinner last week. Emma's eyes sparkled with understanding. Ah, the guilt of the successful child. I know it well. No matter how many lives we save or companies we build, we still feel like we're letting them down somehow. Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. Emma hadn't exaggerated. The carbonara was exceptional. So, she said after a while, are we going to discuss the trial results? Or was that just a pretense to get me to have dinner with you? Alex felt his cheeks warm slightly. Can't it be both, mister? Reed, she said, her tone playful but firm. If this is more than a professional dinner, I should remind you about my policy regarding business relationships. And if I told you I'm considering stepping back from direct involvement in the medical division? The words surprised even him as they came out. Emma raised an eyebrow. Oh? I've been thinking about it for a while, he continued, realizing it was true. Bringing in someone else to oversee that department. Someone with actual medical background. That's unexpected. I'm full of surprises, Dr. Chen. Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment, the rest of the restaurant seemed to fade away. Then Emma's phone buzzed, the hospital's emergency tone. I'm sorry, she said, quickly checking the message. I have to go. Emergency surgery, a 7-year-old with an aortic dissection. Alex immediately signaled for the check. Let me drive you. Alex, it's faster than waiting for a taxi, he insisted. And this time, it's not raining. She hesitated only briefly before nodding. During the drive to the hospital, she was already on the phone, discussing the patient's condition with her team. Alex listened, impressed by how quickly she shifted into doctor mode, all traces of their dinner conversation replaced by medical terminology and decisive commands. As they pulled up to the emergency entrance, she turned to him. Thank you for dinner. And the ride. She paused, seeming to make a decision. I enjoyed talking with you, Alex. Enough to do it again? A small smile played at her lips. Ask me again when you're no longer directly involved in my hospital's technology contracts. Then she was gone, rushing through the hospital doors, leaving Alex sitting in his car with a mixture of hope and determination. He pulled out his phone and dialed his coup. James? We need to talk about restructuring the medical division. First thing Monday morning. Monday morning brought chaos to Reed Enterprises. Alex sat in his conference room, surrounded by concerned executives, as he announced his decision to restructure the medical division. With all due respect, Mr. Reed, James Parker, his coup, interjected. The medical division is our fastest growing sector. Why change what's working? Alex maintained his composure, though Emma's words about meaningful work echoed in his mind. Because we can do better. We need someone with medical expertise leading this division, not just business acumen. This wouldn't have anything to do with your recent meetings at Presbyterian, would it? James asked carefully, his eyes studying Alex's expression. Before Alex could respond, Sarah rushed in with urgent news. Mr. Reed, there's a situation. The prototype of the new pediatric heart valve has failed during testing. Social media is already picking up the story. Alex's blood ran cold. The valve was meant to be their next breakthrough device, scheduled for clinical trials next month. Failed how? Material degradation under stress. The team is analyzing the data now, but early reports suggest it could have been catastrophic if it had reached human trials. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Alex immediately thought of Emma, of the trust she'd placed in their technology. Clear my schedule, he ordered, standing up. I need to go to the lab. Hours later, surrounded by technical reports and testing data, Alex finally understood the scope of the problem. The valve's design was fundamentally flawed, something that should have been caught months ago. His phone buzzed with Emma's name on the screen. I assume you've heard, he answered wearily. The whole hospital is talking about it, she replied, her voice neutral. The board is concerned. Emma, Dr. Chen, she corrected gently. Right now, I'm calling as the head of the trial committee. We need answers, Alex. The formality stung, but he understood. I'm personally overseeing the investigation. This won't happen again. Can't you see why this is exactly why I keep business and personal separate? She sighed. People's lives depend on these devices. I know. Trust me. I have to go. The board wants to meet about potentially suspending all trials of Reed devices. The line went dead, leaving Alex staring at his phone. The worst part wasn't the potential financial impact or the PR nightmare. It was disappointing Emma, proving her right about keeping her distance. Late that night, as he pored over more reports, Sarah brought him coffee and an unexpected piece of information. Sir, I found something interesting in the development timeline. The original design was modified 3 months ago, after the initial successful tests. Who authorized the changes? James Parker, sir. He pushed for a more cost-effective manufacturing process. Alex felt his jaw tighten. James had been with the company since the beginning, a trusted advisor and friend, but he'd also been pushing for faster growth, higher profits, often at the expense of thorough testing. Making a decision, Alex picked up his phone and dialed a number he rarely used. Dr. Catherine Morrison? This is Alexander Reed. I know it's late, but I need your help. How would you feel about coming out of retirement to head our medical division? Dr. Morrison had been his mother's cardiologist. Brilliant, but uncompromising when it came to patient safety. She'd retired 2 years ago, despite Alex's previous attempts to recruit her. Finally ready to admit, you need actual medical expertise, Alexander, she asked, amusement in her voice. That, and I need someone who won't be afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. Give me one good reason why I should leave my peaceful retirement. Alex thought of Emma, of her brother Michael, of all the children waiting for technology that could save their lives. Because we've lost our way, Dr. Morrison. We're letting profit margins dictate medical decisions, and I need help fixing that. There was a long pause. I'll be there tomorrow morning. And Alexander, be prepared for some major changes. After hanging up, Alex drafted 2 emails. The first was to his board, announcing Dr. Morrison's appointment and a complete review of all medical products. The second was to Emma. Dr. Chen, I understand if you need to maintain professional distance, but I want you to know that I'm making changes, real ones. Not for business, not for PR, and not even for you, but because you reminded me why I started this division in the first place. Alex, his finger hovered over the send button. Was he crossing a line? Would this make things worse? Finally, he pressed send, then turned back to the valve reports. He had a long night ahead of him, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was doing exactly what he should be. The morning brought a flurry of activity to Reed Enterprises. Dr. Catherine Morrison swept through the medical division like a hurricane, her silver hair and sharp eyes commanding respect from everyone she encountered. Alex watched from his office as she interrogated the development team about their testing protocols. His phone buzzed with a response from Emma. Changes are good, Alex, but they need to be more than just personnel. I've seen too many companies prioritize profits over patients. Prove me wrong. Dr. Chen, her words stung, but he knew she was right. As he pondered his response, Dr. Morrison entered his office unannounced. "Your medical division is a mess, Alexander," she declared, dropping a thick folder on his desk. "Rush testing, cut corners, documentation gaps. What happened to the idealistic young man who wanted to save his mother?" Alex winced. "I got lost in the numbers, Catherine. Help me fix it. It'll take months to properly review everything. And some projects will need to be completely scrapped." "Whatever it takes," he agreed. "Full transparency. No shortcuts." Catherine studied him carefully. "This wouldn't have anything to do with a certain pediatric surgeon, would it?" Hospital gossip travels fast. Alex maintained a neutral expression. "This is about doing what's right." She responded noncommittally. "Well, your first test is coming up. The hospital board wants a full presentation on the valve failure and our remediation plans. Tomorrow morning." Alex's heart skipped. "Emma will be there? Dr. Chen?" Catherine corrected with a knowing look. "Will be leading the questioning." "And Alexander?" "She's not known for being gentle with medical technology companies that make mistakes." The next morning, Alex and Catherine faced the hospital board in the main conference room. Emma sat directly across from him, her expression professionally neutral as she reviewed their report. "You're proposing a complete halt to all trials?" she asked, looking up. "Yes," Catherine answered, "until we can verify the safety of every device currently in development." "That could take months," another board member protested. "Better months of delay than one life lost," Alex interjected, meeting Emma's eyes briefly. The questioning continued for hours. Emma was thorough, challenging every assumption and demanding detailed explanations. But there was something else in her questions, not just professional concern, but disappointment. After the meeting, Alex caught up with her in the hallway. "Dr. Chen, do you have a moment?" She hesitated but nodded, leading him to a quiet corner. "That was quite a presentation, Alex." Bringing in Dr. Morrison was smart. It wasn't about being smart. It was about being right. He paused. "I know you're disappointed in me." "I'm disappointed in the situation," she corrected. "But hiring Catherine, it's a step in the right direction." Before he could respond, her pager beeped. Another emergency. "I have to go," she said, already turning away. "Emma," he called after her. "Have dinner with me again. Not to discuss business. Just us." She stopped, not turning around. "You know I can't." "Not while all this is happening." "Then tell me when. Tell me what I need to do to prove that this isn't just about business or PR." Finally, she turned back, her expression softening slightly. "Prove it through actions, not words, Alex. Show me that Reed Enterprises can be what it claims to be, a company that puts patients first." As she walked away, Catherine appeared beside him. "She's right, you know, and she's worth waiting for." Alex smiled ruefully. "That obvious, huh? Alexander, I've known you since you were a teenager tinkering with medical devices in your garage. I haven't seen you look at anyone the way you look at her." Over the next few weeks, Alex threw himself into the restructuring. He spent hours in the lab with the development team, revisiting every design decision. Catherine was relentless, demanding explanations for every shortcut they'd taken. One evening, as he was leaving the office late, he received an unexpected text from Emma. "Just used one of your original heart valves on a 4-year-old girl. Perfect function. That's the Reed Enterprises I believe in. Keep going." Emma. The message filled him with renewed determination. He might not be able to be with her right now, but he could make sure he was worthy of her trust when the time came. "Thank you," he texted back. "How's the patient?" "Stable. She asked me if I was an angel because I fixed her heart. I told her the real angels were the people who made the valve that saved her." Alex smiled, saving the message. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more scrutiny, more hard decisions. But tonight, somewhere in the hospital, a little girl's heart was beating strongly because of something he had helped create. And maybe, just maybe, he was on the path to winning back not just Emma's trust, but her heart as well. 3 months into the medical division's restructuring, Alex found himself in an unusual position, sitting in a children's hospital playroom, surrounded by colorful drawings and tiny chairs. He had come to observe how their devices were actually being used, at Catherine's insistence. "Mr. Reed?" A small voice interrupted his thoughts. A little girl, perhaps 7, stood before him clutching a worn teddy bear. "Are you the one who makes the special hearts?" "Sophia." Emma's voice came from the doorway. "What did we say about bothering visitors?" It's okay, Alex assured her, turning to the child. And yes, my company helps make things to fix hearts. Are you waiting for one? Sophia nodded solemnly. Dr. Emma says I need a new valve, like getting new batteries for my Teddy's talking box. Alex felt his throat tighten. This was why he'd started all this, not for profit margins or market share, but for children like Sophia. Sophia, honey, it's time for your tests, Emma said gently. The girl hugged her Teddy closer and followed a nurse out. Once they were alone, Emma's professional mask softened slightly. I didn't expect to see you here. Catherine's orders. She wants me to spend time where our devices are actually used. He gestured around the playroom. It's humbling. Good, Emma said, but there was warmth in her voice. That's exactly what Catherine hoped for. These kids, Alex, they're why we do what we do. Not stockholders, not profit margins. Sophia seems special to you, he observed. Emma's eyes followed the girl's retreating form. She's been here 3 months. Her family moved from Mexico for her treatment, spent everything they had. She's on the waiting list for one of your valves. Waiting list? I thought we had adequate supply. For those who can afford them. Emma's tone sharpened. Your company's pricing structure puts these devices out of reach for many families. The criticism hit hard, but Alex knew she was right. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick email to Catherine and his financial team, meeting tomorrow. Topic: Pricing Structure Review and Accessibility Initiatives. You're really serious about making changes, Emma observed, watching him. I told you I would be. He met her gaze. Catherine says our safety reviews will be complete next month. Maybe then. Alex, she interrupted softly, I've seen the changes you're making. They're impressive, but Dr. Chen. A nurse rushed in. Sophia's having complications. Emma's demeanor instantly shifted to doctor mode. I have to go, can I? Alex hesitated. Can I stay? In the waiting area? She studied him for a moment before nodding. Her parents could use some company. Hours passed as Alex sat with Sophia's parents in the waiting area. Their English was limited, but grief and worry needed no translation. He learned they had sold their restaurant in Mexico City to pay for Sophia's treatment. Finally, Emma emerged, looking tired but relieved. She's stable, she announced, but she needs that valve soon. After explaining the situation to Sophia's parents in Spanish, Emma turned to leave, but Alex caught her arm gently. Wait, he said. I need to show you something. He pulled out his tablet and quickly drafted an email, showing it to her. Effective immediately. Implementation of sliding scale pricing for all Reed medical devices based on family income. Additionally, creation of Reed Foundation Healthcare Initiative. Initial funding $50 million to subsidize treatments for families in need. Starting with Sofia Martinez. Emma read it twice, her eyes widening. Alex, this is significant. Send it, he said, holding out the tablet. Right now. You pushed the button. Her finger hovered over the screen. This isn't just for you? He shook his head. No, it's for Sophia. For all the Sophias. You just helped me see it clearly. She pressed send, then looked up at him with new respect in her eyes. Thank you. Have dinner with me, he said softly. Not to discuss business. Not as CEO and doctor. Just Alex and Emma. This time she didn't immediately refuse. Let me check on Sophia first. There's a small cafe across the street. Meet me there in an hour? As she walked away, Alex felt lighter than he had in months. He had no idea where this evening might lead, but for the first time, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be, not just as a CEO, but as a person. Catherine's voice came from behind him. Well done, Alexander. Well done indeed. The cafe across from the hospital was nothing like the upscale restaurants Alex usually frequented. It was small, cozy, with mismatched chairs and the rich aroma of fresh coffee. He chose a quiet corner table, ordered a black coffee, and waited. Emma arrived exactly an hour later, still in her scrubs, but with her hair freshly smoothed back. She looked tired but satisfied. Sophia's resting comfortably, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Her parents are overwhelmed by your generosity. They shouldn't have to sell everything just to save their daughter, Alex replied. None of them should. The waitress brought Emma's green tea. She had obviously been here often enough that they knew her order. So, Emma said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug, not as CEO and doctor. Just Alex and Emma, he confirmed. Though I have to admit, I'm a bit out of practice at just being Alex, she smiled. Tell me about him. The pre-CEO version. Alex leaned back, considering. He was idealistic. Spent most of his time in his garage, tinkering with medical devices, driving his mother crazy with failed experiments. His sister Charlotte used to joke that he'd either end up changing the world or blowing it up. What changed? Success, I suppose. The first device we developed actually worked. Then investors got interested. The company grew. And somewhere along the way, you lost sight of that garage tinkerer? Until recently, he admitted, meeting her eyes. Someone reminded me why I started all this in the first place. Emma looked down at her tea. Alex, I know. Professional boundaries. He smiled ruefully. But you asked about just Alex. And just Alex is being honest. Tell me about your sister, she said, changing the subject slightly. You mentioned she teases you? Charlotte? She's my conscience, really. Never lets me forget where I came from. She's actually a teacher, refuses to take any money from the company. Says someone in the family needs to keep it real. I like her already. Emma laughed. She'd like you too. Always said I needed someone who'd call me out on my bullshit. Their conversation flowed easily after that, touching on childhood memories, favorite books, embarrassing medical school stories. Emma told him about her first surgery, how her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the scalpel. Alex shared the story of his first failed prototype, which had exploded spectacularly during a family dinner. My mom still hasn't forgiven me for ruining her favorite tablecloth. He chuckled. How is she? Emma asked. Your mother's condition? Alex's expression softened. Stable. The devices help, but it's an ongoing battle. She's actually the one who suggested I spend more time in the hospital, seeing how our work affects real people. Smart woman. She'd love to meet you, Alex said, then quickly added, professionally, of course. As one of our leading surgical partners, Emma raised an eyebrow, of course. Just then, her phone buzzed. Another hospital alert. I'm sorry, I have to check this, she said, reading the message. Her expression turned serious. I need to go. One of my post-op patients is showing concerning symptoms. Alex immediately stood. Let me drive you. Alex. The hospital's 3 blocks away. It's faster than walking, and time matters, right? She couldn't argue with that logic. In the car, she was already on the phone with her team, discussing the patient's symptoms. Alex listened, once again impressed by how quickly she shifted into doctor mode. As they pulled up to the emergency entrance, Emma paused before getting out. Thank you for tonight. For just being Alex. Emma, he called as she opened the door. Would just Alex be overstepping if he asked to do this again? She looked back, a small smile playing at her lips. Maybe just Emma would say yes. But let me save this patient first. As he watched her disappear into the hospital, Alex's phone buzzed. It was Catherine. The board approved the pricing changes and foundation initiative. Congratulations, Alexander. Now, about that dinner with Dr. Chen. Not now, Catherine. Just remember, some things are worth waiting for. But don't wait too long. Alex smiled, looking up at the hospital, where Emma was undoubtedly already saving another life. Trust me, I know exactly what's worth waiting for. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Alex was in a meeting with Catherine when Sarah burst in, tablet in hand. Sir, you need to see this, she said, pulling up a financial news website. The headline made his blood run cold. Riot Enterprises board member James Parker reveals insider concerns. New medical pricing policy threatens company stability. The article detailed how James, his former coup and longtime friend, had gone public with criticisms of Alex's recent decisions, particularly the sliding scale pricing initiative and the foundation. He's rallying shareholders, Catherine observed grimly. Claims you're putting personal interests above company profitability. Alex's phone began buzzing with messages, board members, investors, reporters. But the one that caught his eye was from Emma. Just saw the news. Are you okay? Before he could respond, Catherine laid a hand on his arm. Alexander, this is serious. James knows enough about our operations to cause real damage. He's angry because I shut down his cost-cutting measures, Alex said, his jaw tight. The ones that nearly led to the valve failure. The board's calling an emergency meeting. They want to review your leadership. Alex started typing a response to Emma but stopped. This was exactly why she had been right about professional boundaries. Now his attempts to reform the company were being painted as emotional decisions influenced by his feelings for her. Sir, Sarah interrupted. Hospital board on line 1. They're concerned about the stability of our partnership. The day devolved into a whirlwind of meetings and damage control. By evening, Alex was exhausted but still at his desk when Catherine entered with coffee. "The hospital representatives are satisfied for now," she reported. "But James is pushing for a board vote on your position as CEO. How bad is it?" "It's close. Your recent changes have made some powerful people nervous." Alex ran a hand through his hair. "I won't go back to the old way of doing things, Catherine. I can't." "Then fight," she said simply. "But fight smart." His phone buzzed again, another message from Emma. "Heard about the board vote. Don't let them stop you from doing what's right. Some things are worth fighting for." He stared at the message, an idea forming. "Catherine, what if we could prove that the new pricing model actually benefits the company long-term? We'd need data, success stories, public support. We have Sophia," Alex said, standing up, "and others like her. Real patients whose lives were changed, not just numbers on a spreadsheet." Catherine smiled slowly. "And we have Dr. Chen, a respected medical professional who can speak to the impact of these changes." "No," Alex said firmly. "I won't drag Emma into this. It would only validate James's accusations about personal influence." "Alexander," Catherine sighed. "She's already involved. The question is whether you'll let her help." Just then, his office door opened, and Emma herself walked in, still in surgical scrubs. "Your assistant let me up," she explained. "I thought you might need a friend right now. Not a doctor, not a partner hospital representative, just a friend." Alex felt something in his chest tighten. "Emma, I know about James's accusations," she continued, "about how he's using our friendship to question your judgment." "I won't ask you to get involved," he said. "This is my fight." Emma crossed her arms. "What if I want to get involved? What if I believe in what you're trying to do here? It could damage your reputation at the hospital." "Alex," she said softly, "some things are more important than professional reputations. Like saving lives, like doing what's right." Catherine cleared her throat. "I'll leave you two to discuss strategy. But Alexander? The board meets tomorrow at noon. We need a plan by morning." After she left, Emma sat down across from Alex's desk. "Tell me everything, not as CEO to doctor, as Alex to Emma." For the next few hours, they talked through options, strategies, and possibilities. Emma's medical perspective provided insights Alex hadn't considered, while his business knowledge helped shape their approach. As midnight approached, they had the outline of a plan. It was risky, but it might just work. "Thank you," Alex said as they prepared to leave, "for believing in this, in me." Emma paused at the door. "You know this might change things between us. Professionally, I know. And personally?" Alex met her eyes. "That depends on whether you still think some boundaries are worth maintaining." She smiled slightly. "Let's save your company first. Then we can talk about boundaries." As she left, Alex felt both terrified and hopeful. Tomorrow would either vindicate everything he'd been working for or end his time at Reed Enterprises. But somehow, having Emma in his corner made him feel like either outcome would be bearable. His phone buzzed one last time. A message from Charlotte. "Mom told me what's happening. Give them hell, big brother. And tell that doctor of yours that anyone who'd risk their career to help you fight for what's right is definitely worth keeping around." The Reed Enterprises boardroom was packed the next morning. Board members sat around the massive oak table, while shareholders and executives lined the walls. James Parker sat near the head of the table, looking confident. Alex entered last, with Catherine beside him. Emma was already there, seated with other hospital representatives. Their eyes met briefly before Alex took his position. "We're here to discuss recent decisions made by Mr. Reed," the board chairman began. "Decisions that some feel threaten the company's financial stability." James stood up, armed with charts and projections. "The numbers don't lie," he declared. "The new pricing model could reduce profits by up to 30%. The foundation is draining resources, all because our CEO has let personal feelings cloud his judgment." He glanced meaningfully at Emma, who maintained her professional composure. "If I may respond," Alex said, standing. "James is right about one thing. This is personal. It's personal for every family who's had to choose between saving their child and keeping their home. It's personal for every patient who's been denied life-saving technology because of our pricing." He clicked a button, and the screen behind him lit up with Sophia's picture. This is Sophia Martinez. 3 months ago, her parents sold everything they owned to pay for one of our valves. Today, under our new model, that same family would still have their business, their home, and their daughter would still get the care she needs. Emotional appeals don't pay shareholders, James interrupted. Actually, Catherine stepped forward. They do. She distributed folders to each board member. These are projections showing increased market share due to our new accessibility. Hospitals that couldn't afford our devices before are now signing contracts. The foundation has generated more positive press than any marketing campaign in company history. Emma stood up next. If I may speak as a medical professional, the chairman nodded. In the 3 months since Reed Enterprises implemented these changes, my department has seen a 40% increase in successful procedures using their devices. Each success story generates referrals, trust, and yes, profit. But more importantly, it generates lives saved. Alex watched her speak, admiring her poise and conviction. She was risking her own professional standing to support him. Furthermore, she continued, the research partnership between our hospital and Reed Enterprises has attracted international attention. 3 major European hospitals have already expressed interest in similar arrangements. James scoffed. Dr. Chen's testimony is hardly impartial, given her relationship with Mr. Reed. My relationship with Mr. Reed is strictly professional, Emma stated firmly. My testimony is based on medical data and patient outcomes. Unless you're suggesting that saving lives is somehow an inappropriate goal for a medical technology company. A murmur of approval ran through the room. James looked less confident. Alex stepped forward again. I founded this company to save lives, starting with my mother's. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that mission. I'm not asking you to choose between profit and purpose. I'm showing you how we can have both. He clicked through more slides, patient testimonials, hospital partnerships, international interest. The old model was safe, predictable. But this new direction, this is how we become more than just another corporation. This is how we change medicine forever. The vote took over an hour. When the chairman finally announced the results, Alex held his breath. By a margin of 3 votes, the board has decided to maintain current leadership and continue the new initiatives. The relief in the room was palpable. James stormed out, followed by a few allies, but most stayed to congratulate Alex. Through the crowd, he caught Emma's eye. She gave him a small smile before slipping out quietly. Later that evening, as he sat in his office processing the day's events, he received a text from her. Congratulations. You did it. We did it, he replied. I couldn't have done this without you. About what James said. Emma, you don't have to explain. Meet me at Bella Knot, 8 p.m. We should talk. Alex stared at the message, his heart racing. I'll be there. Catherine appeared in his doorway. Going somewhere? Maybe it's time to discuss those boundaries, he said, grabbing his coat. She smiled knowingly. Just remember, Alexander, sometimes the best things in life come after the hardest battles. Bella Knot was quiet that evening, with only a few tables occupied. Alex arrived early, choosing their usual corner table. The elderly owner nodded in recognition, bringing a bottle of wine without being asked. Emma arrived exactly at 8, wearing casual clothes instead of scrubs. A simple blue dress that made her look softer, less guarded. She sat down across from him, accepting a glass of wine. So, she began. Quite a day. Emma, about what James said, she held up a hand. Let me go first, please. Alex nodded, watching as she gathered her thoughts. When I first met you in that taxi, she said, I thought you were just another wealthy CEO, disconnected from the real impact of your work. Then I saw how you interacted with Sophia, how you fought for changes that could hurt your own position. And I realized I was wrong. She took a sip of wine before continuing. I've spent years building walls between professional and personal relationships. It was safer that way, cleaner. But today, watching you fight for what you believe in, I realized something. What's that? Alex asked softly. That sometimes the most professional thing you can do is let yourself care. Really care, not just about outcomes and statistics, but about people. Like Sophia? Like Sophia, she agreed. And like you. Alex felt his heart skip. What are you saying, Emma? I'm saying that maybe some boundaries are meant to be crossed. Maybe sometimes the personal and professional can't be separated, and shouldn't be. And the hospital board, your position? I spoke to them after the meeting. They're satisfied that our relationship hasn't compromised my judgment. If anything, They think it's improved communication between our institutions." Alex reached across the table, taking her hand. This time she didn't pull away. "So," he said, "just Alex and just Emma." She smiled. "Well, CEO, Alex and Dr. Chen still have to maintain professional standards at work. But after hours? After hours, we can be ourselves?" "Exactly." They ordered dinner, carbonara for both of them, and talked about everything that had happened. Emma shared stories about Sophia's recovery, while Alex discussed his plans for expanding the foundation's reach. "Charlotte wants to meet you," he mentioned. "She says anyone who can keep me in line deserves a medal." Emma laughed. "I'd like that." "And your mother? She already loves you. Says any doctor who'd risk their career to defend patient care must be special." As they finished dinner, a light rain began falling outside. Alex watched as Emma's eyes drifted to the window, remembering their first meeting. "No taxi sharing tonight," he said with a smile. "I brought a car. Pity," she teased. "That worked out pretty well last time." They stepped outside under Alex's umbrella, walking close together. At his car, they paused. "Emma," he said seriously, "I want to do this right. No rushing, no pressure. We can take it slow." She looked up at him, rain pattering on the umbrella above them. "Alex?" "Yes." "Sometimes the right pace isn't the slow one." And then she kissed him, right there in the rain. It was soft and sure, like coming home to something you didn't know you were missing. When they finally broke apart, Alex rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since that first taxi ride." "I know," she smiled. "Me too." From inside the restaurant, the elderly owner watched them with a knowing smile, remembering young love and the way it could bridge any boundary. The following weeks brought changes both subtle and significant. Alex and Emma began finding a balance between their professional and personal lives. During hospital board meetings, they maintained strict professionalism, but evenings often found them sharing quiet dinners or walks through Central Park. One particular morning, Alex sat in his office reviewing expansion plans when his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Reed," Sarah announced, "your sister Charlotte is here." Before he could respond, Charlotte burst in, her teacher's authority evident in her stance. "So, when were you planning to introduce me to the famous Dr. Chen?" "Hello to you too, sis." Alex smiled. "I've been a bit busy saving the company, remember? Too busy for family dinner tonight? Mom's cooking." "And," she grinned mischievously, "I may have already invited Emma." Alex nearly choked on his coffee. "You what?" "Called the hospital. Told them I was your sister. She's off duty at 7. Charlotte." "Too late, big brother. Mom's already planning the menu." Just then, his phone buzzed with a message from Emma. "Your sister is quite persistent. Should I be worried about dinner? I'm so sorry." He typed back. "You don't have to go. Actually, I'd love to. Unless you're not ready for that step?" Alex smiled at his phone. "I'm ready. Fair warning though, Charlotte's a force of nature. I think I can handle it. I deal with stubborn Reeds every day." That evening, Alex picked Emma up at her apartment. She wore a simple black dress and looked slightly nervous. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek. "I've never done the meet the family thing before," she admitted. "Most of my relationships were too focused on career to get this far." "They'll love you," he assured her. "Though I should warn you, my mother will probably show you embarrassing childhood photos." The Reed family home was modest compared to Alex's penthouse, a comfortable brownstone that had been in the family for generations. As they approached the door, Emma squeezed his hand. "Ready?" he asked. Before she could answer, the door flew open, revealing Charlotte, grinning widely. "Finally." "Mom, they're here." Elizabeth Reed appeared behind her daughter, elegant despite her obvious health challenges. Her face lit up at the sight of Emma. "Dr. Chen," she said warmly, "I've heard so much about you." "Please, call me Emma," Emma replied, instantly charmed by Alex's mother's gentle presence. "Only if you call me Elizabeth. Come in, dinner's almost ready." The house was warm and inviting, filled with family photos and well-worn furniture. Emma noticed several of Alex's early prototypes displayed proudly on shelves. "Ah, the famous exploding valve," she commented, pointing to one particularly scorched device. "You told her about that?" Charlotte laughed. "Mom's tablecloth never recovered." "It was worth it," Elizabeth called from the kitchen. That failure led to his first successful design. During dinner, Emma found herself relaxing into the family dynamic. Charlotte shared embarrassing stories about Alex's awkward teenage years, while Elizabeth spoke proudly of his dedication to medical innovation. He used to spend hours in the garage, Elizabeth recalled, determined to create something that could help people like me. Still determined, Emma said softly, looking at Alex. Just on a bigger scale now. After dinner, while Charlotte helped Elizabeth with dessert, Alex showed Emma the garage-turned-workshop where everything had started. "This is where it all began," he said, gesturing to the cluttered workbench. "Every successful device we've made started as a prototype right here." Emma ran her fingers over the tools. "It's amazing. You can feel the passion here. I lost sight of that for a while," he admitted. "Got caught up in boardrooms and profit margins. But you found your way back," she said, turning to face him. "Thanks to you." She shook her head. "You did that yourself. I just reminded you why you started." He pulled her close, kissing her softly. "You did more than that. You showed me what really matters." "If you two are done being romantic in the garage," Charlotte's voice interrupted, "Mom's serving her famous apple pie." They broke apart, laughing, and followed Charlotte back inside. The rest of the evening passed in comfortable conversation and familiar teasing. As they prepared to leave, Elizabeth pulled Emma aside. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For bringing my son back to himself. I haven't seen him this happy in years." Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. "He did the same for me." A month after the family dinner, Emma and Alex had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Their professional lives remained separate during the day, but evenings and weekends were theirs. However, their growing relationship was about to face its first real test. One morning, Catherine burst into Alex's office, looking concerned. "We have a situation. The European expansion. There's an issue with the Berlin hospital contract." "What kind of issue?" "They want a resident expert on site for 6 months to oversee implementation. Someone who knows both the technical and medical aspects." Alex felt his stomach drop. "They want me to go to Berlin. For 6 months, yes. The board thinks it's crucial for the company's international growth." Just then, his phone lit up with a message from Emma. "Emergency surgery canceled. Lunch today?" His heart felt heavy as he replied, "Need to talk. Important." They met at their usual cafe near the hospital. Emma knew something was wrong the moment she saw his face. "Berlin?" she repeated after he explained. 6 months? I can try to negotiate it down," he said. "Or send someone else, Alex," she interrupted gently. "This is important for the company, for all the patients we could help in Europe." "I know, but..." He reached for her hand. "We just found each other, and we'll still have each other. It's 6 months, not forever." But both knew it wouldn't be simple. Their relationship was still new, still finding its footing. 6 months apart could change everything. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Alex had meetings about the Berlin project, while Emma threw herself into her work, neither wanting to dwell on the impending separation. A week before his departure, Emma was in surgery when complications arose. The patient, a young boy named Marcus, needed an emergency valve replacement. She worked for hours, fighting to save him, but by the time Alex arrived at the hospital, she was sitting alone in the dark consultation room. "Emma?" he said softly. "We lost him," she whispered. "If we'd had the newer valve model, the one still in testing maybe." Alex sat beside her, pulling her close. "You did everything you could. I keep thinking about Sophia. Marcus was the same age. His parents had the same hope in their eyes. Then we'll make sure this doesn't happen again. The work in Berlin, expanding access to new technology, it's for kids like Marcus." She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "I know. That's why you have to go. But tonight, I just need you here." They spent that night at Emma's apartment, talking about Marcus, about Berlin, about all the lives they hoped to save. Emma fell asleep in Alex's arms, and he realized how much harder leaving would be than he'd imagined. The morning of his departure arrived too quickly. Emma insisted on driving him to the airport, maintaining a brave face. 6 months, she said at the security checkpoint. "I'll come back for visits," he promised. "And you could come to Berlin." "I have surgery scheduled," she smiled sadly. "But maybe in a few months." "Emma, if this is too much, if you want to..." She silenced him with a kiss. "Don't you dare suggest we take a break. We'll make this work. How can you be so sure? Because what we're doing matters. Not just us, but all of it. The work, the patience, the changes we're making. Sometimes the hardest things are the most worth doing." He pulled her close one last time. "I love you," he said for the first time. She smiled through her tears. "I love you too. Now go save some lives in Europe." As Alex walked through security, his phone buzzed. A message from Charlotte. She's a keeper, big brother. Don't mess this up. Another from his mother. Distance tests the heart, but it also shows us what truly matters. And finally, one from Emma. Just got an emergency call. Another heart to fix. See? We both have work to do. Call me when you land. Alex boarded the plane feeling both heavy and hopeful. 6 months was a long time, but what they were building, both personally and professionally, was worth the challenge. The first month of long distance proved challenging. Between Berlin's time difference and their demanding schedules, Alex and Emma struggled to find moments to connect. Their conversations often happened in stolen moments. Emma during breaks between surgeries, Alex late at night after meetings. One evening, during their scheduled video call, Emma looked particularly exhausted. Rough day? Alex asked, noting the dark circles under her eyes. Triple bypass on a 5-year-old, she sighed. Successful, but intense. How's Berlin? Making progress. The hospital here is implementing the new valve design you helped develop. They're calling it the Chen Reed model. Emma smiled weakly. Flattering. Though I miss having you in board meetings, your replacement is less passionate. James is still causing trouble? Nothing I can't handle. He's been suggesting that my judgment might be compromised by our relationship. Alex felt a familiar surge of anger. I can call the board. No, Emma interrupted firmly. I'm handling it. Professional Emma doesn't need CEO Alex to fight her battles. He smiled at their familiar distinction between their professional and personal selves. And personal Emma? How is she? Missing personal Alex, she admitted softly. The apartment feels empty, without you dropping by with takeout and terrible medical jokes. 3 more weeks until my first visit home, he reminded her. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on Emma's office door. Dr. Chen? Emergency and pediatric ICU go, Alex said immediately. Save lives. I love you. Love you too. Talk tomorrow? After she disconnected, Alex stared at the dark screen, feeling the weight of the distance. His phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. Berlin board impressed with progress, suggesting extending stay to 9 months. His heart sank. Before he could respond, another message came through. From Sophia's mother. Dr. Emma helped Sophia today. Said the new valve working perfect. Thank you, Mr. Reed. He smiled, remembering why they were doing all this. Opening his laptop, he began drafting plans for a more efficient implementation timeline. The sooner the Berlin project succeeded, the sooner he could return home. Meanwhile, Emma faced her own challenges. The emergency turned out to be a newborn with a complex heart defect, the kind of case that would have had her consulting with Alex months ago. As she scrubbed in for surgery, she thought about how much had changed. She was stronger now, more confident in her decisions. Distance had forced both of them to grow independently while staying connected. Late that night, after successfully stabilizing the newborn, she found a package waiting in her office. Inside was a small heart-shaped device, clearly one of Alex's early prototypes. With a note from Elizabeth, he made this the week after he met you. Said he finally understood why every heart needed to be saved. Keep it as a reminder that some distances are temporary, but real love endures. Elizabeth Emma placed the device on her desk, next to her medical degrees and awards. It served as a perfect symbol of how their professional and personal lives had intertwined. The next few weeks passed in a blur of surgeries, meetings, and late-night calls. Emma threw herself into her work, implementing new procedures and pushing for more accessible care. Alex expanded the Berlin project's scope, establishing protocols that would help hospitals across Europe. Then, 3 days before Alex's planned visit home, Emma received an urgent call. A hospital in Chicago needed her expertise for a groundbreaking surgery, scheduled for the exact days of Alex's visit. Her hand shook as she dialed his number. I can try to reschedule, she said after explaining the situation. Emma, Alex said gently, you're the best pediatric cardiac surgeon on the East Coast. Those children need you more than I do. But we haven't seen each other in months, and we'll wait a few more weeks. What we're doing, both of us, it matters. Personal Alex and Emma will have their time. She felt tears in her eyes. When did you get so wise? Must be all that German philosophical influence, he joked. Go to Chicago. Save lives. Make me proud. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. And Emma? I'm extending the Berlin stay by 3 months. Her heart stopped. Alex. To implement faster, he explained quickly. The sooner we finish here, the sooner I can come home for good. No more long distance. She understood then. They were both making sacrifices for a bigger purpose. Their love wasn't just about them anymore. It was about all the lives they could save together. The Chicago surgery was more complicated than Emma had anticipated. What was supposed to be a 3-day consultation turned into a week-long stay as complications arose. She worked around the clock, FaceTiming with Alex during brief breaks. "You look exhausted," he observed during one late-night call. "Says the man who hasn't slept in 2 days," she countered, noting his disheveled appearance. "How's the implementation going?" "Challenging. The German medical board has additional requirements we didn't anticipate, but that's not why I called." He paused, his expression turning serious. "Catherine found something concerning in our supply chain audit." Emma sat up straighter. "What kind of concerning? Remember those material degradation issues we had with the prototype valves? There's evidence James knew about the problems months before the public disclosure. He deliberately hid test results." Emma felt her blood run cold. That could have killed patients. "Exactly. We're building a case, but..." He hesitated. "Emma, this might get ugly. James still has allies on the board, and he knows about our relationship. He might try to use that against us." "Let him try," she said firmly. "We have nothing to hide." Just then, her pager buzzed. "I have to go. Patient coding. Go. Be brilliant. I love you." The next 48 hours were a blur of surgeries and critical decisions. When Emma finally emerged, exhausted but successful, she found several missed calls from Catherine. "Dr. Chen," Catherine said when she called back. "We need you back in New York. James is making his move." Emma rushed back to find the hospital in turmoil. James had released emails suggesting she had fast-tracked approval of Reed devices in exchange for personal favors. Though the accusations were false, the implication was damaging. She walked into an emergency board meeting with her head held high. James sat there, looking smug. "Dr. Chen," he began smoothly, "would you care to explain your relationship with Mr. Reed and its influence on your medical decisions?" "Gladly," she replied, pulling out a thick folder. "Here are detailed records of every device approval, complete with independent evaluations and patient outcomes. You'll notice they all predate any personal relationship with Alex." She turned to face the board directly. "Furthermore, I have documentation of Mr. Parker deliberately concealing safety concerns that could have endangered patients. Which one of us truly compromised medical ethics?" The room erupted in chaos. In Berlin, Alex watched via video link, wishing he could be there in person. Hours later, Emma sat alone in her office when her phone buzzed with a message from Alex. James resigned. Board reviewing all his past decisions. "You were amazing," she smiled wearily. "Just did what needed to be done. Miss you. About that, check your email." Confused, she opened her inbox to find a flight confirmation. Alex was coming home early. "But the implementation is ahead of schedule," he replied. "Catherine can handle the rest. Some things are more important." 3 days later, Emma stood at JFK's arrival gate, her heart racing. When Alex appeared, looking tired but happy, she ran into his arms. "No more extended trips," he murmured into her hair. "No more hiding our relationship," she added. "We're stronger together." That evening, over dinner at Bellinat, Alex shared his plans for the company's future, more transparent, more focused on patient care. Emma talked about her ideas for expanding pediatric cardiac care. "We've both grown," she observed. "The distance, it changed us." "For the better," Alex agreed. "We're not just Alex and Emma anymore. We're building something bigger than ourselves." As autumn returned to New York, Alex and Emma found themselves settling into a new rhythm. The challenges of the past year had strengthened their relationship, but also brought new responsibilities. One morning, as they shared breakfast in Alex's penthouse, Emma brought up something that had been on her mind. "The pediatric ward needs expansion," she said, stirring her coffee. "We're turning away cases because we don't have enough beds." Alex looked up from his tablet. "What are you proposing?" "A new wing, dedicated to complex cardiac cases. But," she hesitated, "it would require significant funding." "How significant?" "20 million at least." Alex was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "I have a better idea. What if we built an entirely new children's cardiac center? Not just a wing, a whole facility dedicated to pediatric heart care." Emma's eyes widened. "Alex, that would cost 50 million minimum. But think about it. State-of-the-art equipment, research facilities, enough beds for every child who needs help. The board would never approve. They won't have to. he said, pulling out his phone. The Reed Foundation can fund it independently. No board approval needed. Emma set down her coffee, studying him. This isn't just about the hospital, is it? No, he admitted. Emma, watching you work this past year, seeing how many lives you've touched, I want to create something lasting, something that combines your medical expertise with my resources. A legacy, she said softly. Our legacy, he corrected. The Chen Reed Children's Cardiac Center. Her heart swelled at the idea, but practical concerns surfaced. It would mean more responsibility, longer hours. For both of us, he agreed, but we'd be doing it together. Before she could respond, both their phones buzzed. A group message from Catherine, emergency board meeting in 1 hour. Sophia's case study made international news. Multiple hospitals requesting partnership agreements. They shared a look, remembering where their journey had started. Speaking of legacy, Emma smiled. Sophia's starting school next week. Her mother invited us to her first day. We should go, Alex said immediately. Some things are more important than board meetings. Later that morning, as they presented the cardiac center proposal to Catherine, she nodded approvingly. About time, she said. I was wondering when you two would stop dancing around your shared future and actually build something together. What do you mean? Emma asked. Catherine smiled knowingly. You both have been trying to balance personal and professional lives as if they're separate entities. Maybe it's time to admit they're beautifully intertwined. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning. They scouted locations, reviewed architectural plans, and met with medical equipment suppliers. Every evening, they would spread papers across Alex's living room floor, discussing ideas and possibilities. One night, as they sat surrounded by blueprints, Emma noticed Alex staring at her. What? She asked. Move in with me, he said suddenly. She blinked. What? We're building this center together, planning this future together. I want all of it. The late-night discussions, the morning coffee, the shared dreams. I want a home with you. Emma looked around at their shared work scattered across the floor, at the way their professional and personal lives had become beautifully meshed. Yes, she said simply. Alex pulled her close, blueprints crinkling beneath them. Really? Really? But I'm keeping my apartment for now, just in case you get sick of my medical journals everywhere. He laughed, kissing her softly. Never. Their phones buzzed simultaneously. Another message from Catherine. Berlin Hospital reporting 100% success rate with Chen Reed valve. Board wants worldwide implementation plan. Also, Elizabeth wants to know if you're both coming to Sunday dinner. Emma smiled. Your mother's going to be thrilled about the moving in together part. Charlotte will be insufferable, Alex groaned. She'll say she knew all along. She did know, Emma pointed out. Remember what she said at that first dinner? That some things are meant to be, even if they start with professional boundaries and complicated circumstances? Alex pulled her closer. When did my sister get so wise? Probably around the same time you learned to prioritize what really matters. Winter descended on New York as construction began on the Chen Reed Children's Cardiac Center. The site, located adjacent to the main hospital, was a hive of activity. Alex and Emma found themselves splitting time between their regular duties and overseeing the project's development. One snowy morning, they stood together at the construction site, watching the foundation being laid. Hard to believe this all started with a shared taxi ride, Emma mused, her breath visible in the cold air. Alex wrapped his arm around her. And a stubborn doctor who wouldn't let me forget why I started this company. Their moment was interrupted by Sophia, who came running across the snow-covered ground, her parents following behind. Doctor. Emma, Mr. Reed, she called out excitedly. Mom says I can volunteer here when it's built. Emma knelt down to her level. You want to be a doctor? Sophia nodded enthusiastically. Like you. I want to fix hearts too. Alex watched the interaction, his heart full. This was exactly why they were building this place, not just to treat patients, but to inspire the next generation. Later that day, during a meeting with Catherine about the center's staffing, an unexpected visitor arrived. James? Catherine said sharply as their former coup walked in. He looked different, humbled somehow. I'm not here to cause trouble, he said quickly. I need to tell you something. Alex tensed, but Emma placed a calming hand on his arm. My granddaughter, James continued. She was diagnosed with a heart condition last month. The only thing that can help her is the Chen Reed valve. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. She'll receive the best care, Emma said without hesitation. Personal feelings don't affect medical decisions." James looked at her gratefully. "I was wrong about you, about both of you. What you're building here, it's extraordinary." After he left, Alex pulled Emma close. "You never cease to amaze me. Professional Emma knows every child deserves care," she smiled. Personal Emma might need some time to fully forgive him. Their conversation was interrupted by a call from Elizabeth. "Are you both coming to dinner? I need to discuss wedding venues." Emma laughed at Alex's startled expression. "We haven't even—" "Oh, please," Elizabeth interrupted. "I've seen the ring box in Alex's desk. He's been carrying it around for weeks." Alex turned red. "Mom!" "Well, now that she knows," he said after hanging up, reaching into his pocket. "This isn't how I planned it, but—" He dropped to one knee right there in the office, pulling out a small velvet box. The ring was elegant but unique, a heart-shaped diamond surrounded by smaller stones. "Emma Chen, you changed everything. My life, my company, my understanding of what matters most." "Will you?" "Yes," she interrupted, tears in her eyes. 1,000 times yes. Catherine, who had been quietly watching, cleared her throat. "Finally. Now, about the center's opening ceremony." But they weren't listening anymore. In that moment, surrounded by blueprints for their shared dream, they were just Alex and Emma, no professional titles, no boundaries, just two people who found each other in the most unexpected way. Later that evening, as they celebrated with family at the Reed home, Charlotte raised her glass. "To my brother, who finally learned that the best things in life can't be controlled or planned, and to Emma, who taught him that lesson while saving lives and building dreams." Spring bloomed in New York as the Chen Reed Children's Cardiac Center neared completion. The wedding was planned for the same weekend as the center's opening, a celebration of both their personal and professional unions. The morning of the ceremony, Emma stood in her bridal suite at the hospital's new center, an unconventional choice that felt perfectly right. Sophia, their flower girl, sat nearby arranging rose petals. "You look like a princess," Sophia declared, admiring Emma's elegant gown. Charlotte, serving as maid of honor, adjusted Emma's veil. "Ready to marry my impossible brother?" Emma smiled, looking out the window at the center's entrance, where workers were hanging the final sign, "Chen Reed Children's Cardiac Center, where every heart matters." "More than ready," she replied. Meanwhile, Alex paced in his office, nervous energy radiating off him. Catherine watched with amusement. "Alexander, stop pacing. You'll wear out the carpet. What if something goes wrong? What if the only thing that could go wrong is you being late to your own wedding because you're overthinking everything?" Just then, his phone buzzed with a message from Emma. "Just admitted an emergency case. 8-year-old needs immediate surgery. Wedding might be delayed." Without hesitation, Alex replied, "Do what you need to do. I'll wait forever if I have to." Catherine read the exchange over his shoulder and smiled. "And that's why you two work." The surgery took 2 hours. Guests waited patiently, understanding that this was exactly who they were celebrating, two people who put saving lives above everything else. When Emma finally emerged from the ER, successful but exhausted, she found Alex waiting outside in his tuxedo. "The patient?" he asked. "Stable. Going to make it. Never doubted you for a second," he smiled, pulling her close. "Ready to get married?" "Let me change first," she laughed. "Can't walk down the aisle in scrubs." The ceremony took place in the center's atrium, sunlight streaming through the glass ceiling. The space was filled with a unique mix of guests, medical staff, business executives, patients, and their families. Sophia led the procession, scattering rose petals. When Emma appeared, walking down the aisle with her father, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Their vows were personal and profound. Emma spoke of taxi rides and broken boundaries, of learning that some rules were meant to be broken. Alex talked about finding purpose again through love, about building dreams bigger than himself. "I promise to love both Dr. Chen and Emma," he said, making her laugh through tears. "To support your dreams, share your burdens, and never let professional boundaries keep us apart." "And I promise to love both CEO Alex and just Alex," she responded. "To remind you why we started, to challenge you when needed, and to build our legacy together." After they were pronounced husband and wife, the celebration moved seamlessly into the center's opening ceremony. Alex and Emma cut 2 ribbons, one for their marriage, one for their shared vision becoming reality. Later that evening, during the reception, they danced slowly in the atrium, surrounded by the fruits of their labor. "Happy?" Alex asked softly. "More than I ever imagined possible," Emma replied. "Look around. We did this. Together." The center glowed with promise, its halls already filled with hope. On the wall, a plaque read, "Founded by Dr. Emma Chen Reed and Alexander Reed, where professional excellence meets personal passion, every heart matters." Sophia's mother approached them, tears in her eyes. "My daughter starts medical school in 12 years. She says she's going to work here. We'll keep her spot warm," Emma smiled. As the night wound down, Alex and Emma stood on the center's roof garden, looking out over the city. "What's next?" he asked, holding her close. "More lives to save, more boundaries to break, more dreams to build," she replied. "Together, together," he agreed, kissing her softly. Below them, the center hummed with life and possibility. Inside its walls, their professional and personal lives had merged perfectly, creating something greater than either could have imagined alone. They had started as CEO and doctor, separated by professional boundaries and different worlds. Now they stood as partners in every sense, their love story interwoven with their mission to save lives. As the city lights twinkled around them, they knew this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. There would be more challenges, more lives to save, more dreams to build. But they would face it all together, their hearts beating as one, just like that first rainy night in a shared taxi. This concludes our story of Alex and Emma, where professional boundaries gave way to personal connection, and two separate missions became one shared dream. Their journey reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from breaking the rules we set for ourselves, and that true love can transform not just two people, but countless lives around them.